Hey, welcome to the broadcast. Is real estate a good fit for you? We're going to talk about that on today's broadcast. And I have a list of questions here that I think most people have asked me before, whether real estate is a good fit for them or not. But I would love to hear what you have to say or to have your questions. So feel free to ask your questions in the chat and we will take those as questions come in. So I'm going to open up the chat and just want you to be sure and ask any questions that you may have that come through on our chat. Well, is real estate a good fit for you? That's always a question. I've been teaching real estate for a number of years now. I actually got my real estate license in 1978 at the age of 18. Some of you are quickly trying to figure out how old I am. So 62 years old, 44 years plus in the real estate business. And I'm going to share with you some of those, you know, interesting things that I've had in my real estate career. The first thing I want to kind of tell you about is for many years, I was an undercover real estate agent. I say undercover real estate agent. I used to take my name badge off. I mean, you have to go back to the fact that I'm 19 and 20 years old, and I'm thinking, gosh, do I really want to let people know that I'm a real estate professional? But a story that happened to me back at my 5th year class reunion, and I never will forget this. Her name was Brenda. I don't know if Brenda's watching, but I won't mention your last name, Brenda. But Brenda, you came up to me at my 5th year class reunion, and I'll never forget this. Here I am, and by the way, I did pull up in a Corvette, an L82 1979 Corvette, and I'm not saying that to brag, but real estate had been very good to me. And this is back when interest rates were very high, but I remember pulling up at my class reunion, and I remember seeing Brenda, and Brenda came up to me and she said to me, "Well, at least you have a career." And I looked at her kind of odd, and I thought, "A career? Brenda is thinking of me and my job that I looked at in real estate as a career, as a profession." And really, Brenda, thank you because that turned my whole thought process around that people really look at the real estate profession in a different light or a lens than what I thought they had looked at. So very, very encouraging for me to have that from Brenda. So I want to remind you, if you have any questions, please feel free to share those. And we actually have our first chat that just came in. So I'm going to take a look at this. Is this a bad time to get your real estate license with the way the market is right now? Thank you, CL. That's an interesting handle, but thank you for that. Great question. And that was really one question that I had written down too, that some people ask me, is this a bad time to get your real estate license? That's a great question. Well, I got my real estate license, as I mentioned, in 1978, and interest rates, it's kind of a long story. My mother had started a real estate company back then, and she actually said to me, "Hey, you only have to be 18 years of age to get your real estate license." And so I went to school, passed the exam, and here I am 44 years later. However, interest rates went up to 18, 19, and 20% at that time. And what was interesting about that time is there were still people who wanted to buy a home. There were still people who needed to sell a home. And there were a lot of people who actually got out of the real estate business because they said, "Oh my gosh, interest rates are too high. I don't want to be involved with selling real estate," or "You can't sell real estate now. It's just a tough market." When the reality is there ever going to be a good time to sell real estate? And so really, I think now's a great time to get into real estate. I always love what Tom Watson used to say about playing golf in the rain. And Tom Watson was a famous professional golfer that I always followed as a young boy. He's from Kansas City, Missouri. And Tom used to say, whenever it rains, you have 2/3 or 3/4 of the field is you can beat them because they just give up on the rain. And I think that same philosophy kinda holds over to many professions that we look at, especially in the selling, fields or starting a business. When the economy is tough, a lot of people give up and a lot of people wanna get out, but yet there are still people who need to transact business, and so yes, I think now's a great time to get your license, and keep in mind, interest rates are what? 6%, between 6 or 7, 5 and 7%. Still historically low interest rates compared to what many of many of us faced for many years when interest rates were 12% and higher. So, great question. Thank you, CL, for that. And, I also wanted to just mention right before I got on the exam, one of my questions was that I had written down that some people, will ask occasionally is, um, you know, can I pass the real estate exam or how challenging or difficult is the real estate exam? And believe it or not, right before I went on the broadcast, I got this message. I had to break it up in a couple of messages, but I'll just show you the first part of this. And I have it on my phone right here in front of me from one of my students, Roger. Roger said, just to let you know, I just passed my state exams, passed both state and national in Springfield on first try. And Roger goes on to say the proctor was impressed and said the average is 6 to 8 attempts before passing. Just wanted to let you know. Thanks, Roger. So I was thrilled with that, and we hear those comments a lot, so, very nice. I have another question that came in, and again, feel free, we've got several people watching, we'd love to have your comments in the chat. This question from CL again, "What if it's been a long time since I've gone to school and taken tests? I'm nervous to go back to school, but I'd like to get my real estate license." And, uh, and yes, you go on to say, wow, 6 to 8 times, that's right. Don't be nervous about going back to school. One of the interesting things that I've found over the course of my real estate school, career as a school instructor and as an administrator is that I've seen many people who are successful real estate agents and doing a great job. I have one of my students from the Virginia area. She told me yesterday she was closing her 12th transaction, and she has not been licensed that long. And she's actually going to come on and do an interview with me next week just so she can share some of her success tips. But there's one of my students who's doing so well as a real estate agent, but I want you to know some people have actually come to my school and real estate just wasn't for them. But they said to me, "John, thank you for your school and for allowing me to come back to school because it opened my eyes and it gave me the self-confidence to know that I can go back to school." And I remember one lady, Charlotte, she actually went on to go into, work in the psychology and the police criminal field. But I remember Charlotte telling me, I didn't really like real estate, but it gave me the confidence and the courage to go back to school and go into a profession that she absolutely loves. So, great question. Thank you for sharing that. But don't worry if you haven't been back to school in quite in a while. That's not a big problem, and wouldn't let that deter you from getting your license. Here's a question that I hear a lot, and I have a question here. Uh, let's see here. From Joy, thank you for that. I'm looking forward to being a real estate agent. Nervous about it, but I need to pass my test. And I understand that, Joy. And thank you for that question. Here's what I want to tell you, and this is one of the things that I posted in the school dashboard yesterday. And I just want you to know what I'm hearing from people. And Joy also says here, Thank you for sharing this, Joy. I'm 52 going back to school, and my sister is 62. And there's nothing wrong with that. Joy, I got my um, master's degree at 55. I went back to school and almost said to myself, I'm too old to go back to school. And then I thought, we should never be too old to go back to school. But I wanted to tell you, Joy, on passing the test, and that is the first thing. I speak to a lot of my students, and what's interesting is I have this dashboard and I can see what students are what you're doing. Now, of course, everybody has to go through the school and go through a process of completing the modules. And so everybody does that, but I provide all of these other items into the dashboard for students like digital flashcards, practice test, study exam streams where you can watch me teach the topics in class. What I find is interesting, the people who write me, and I bet you if we went in and looked at Roger's dashboard, in fact, I've seen Roger's name come through because a lot of times I get noticed, but the students like Roger and others are taking advantage of all of the resources that we have for them at Global Real Estate School. And it was really interesting. This happened about 3 months ago, and I received, an email from one of my students, and she said, "I didn't pass the exam today," and she was really discouraged, and she gave me 3 or 4 topics that she said, "I don't think we ever covered this in the class," and I'm looking at the topics, and I'm thinking, "Yeah, we cover that in chapter such and such. We cover that in chapter such and such," and, and I looked in her dashboard and she only stayed in the main course. She never opened up the digital flashcards. She never went into the practice exams. All of this other information she never looked at. Now, that same day, this was about 3 months ago, that same day, I receive another email from one of my students who said, "I passed the exam on the first attempt. Everything was on this test. Thank you so much. I appreciated your course." Now, here's 2 emails I get literally on the same day. One says, "I don't recall some of this information," and I'm looking at the topics she gave me, and I know it's all in the course. And the other one says, "Passed first time." Well, I went into her dashboard. The lady who passed the exam, she had been in the practice exams, she had been in the study sessions. In fact, she told me in the email, "This is what I did," and she followed my plan to a T, passed the test. So, Joy, to answer your question, I know you're gonna be nervous, but if you'll use those other resources, I think they will be very good. So, Joyce asked a couple of other questions. Do you feel like you need more education with real estate by having more if a college education? Um, well, and I guess I wanna make sure I understand your question there. I think that it doesn't really matter whether you have a college education or not. Naturally, if you have a college education, you probably have some better study habits. Or I shouldn't say better, but you're more, the studying is more of a practiced routine, which would help you. But I think some of my better students and some of the really the better real estate agents have never been to college and have done real well. So good question there. I want to go to this one. Joyce says, because real estate book class that I've taken before has way too much fluff in the book to comprehend. Can I study for my state through you on the side after I take my classes in KC? And the answer is absolutely, you can. We have some great, you had one more. Will it make you more successful if you have more of a college education? No, I don't think so. Not at all. So don't worry about that. But yeah, you can come back and we actually have material that you can take through us. Many times, some of the students who've gone through another course and not speaking derogatory about other courses or classes, but a lot of times I have students who actually come to me and say, I get your education. I understand what you're teaching me. And I always appreciate that and like that. So thank you for those questions there. So, again, if you have a question, would love for you to um, uh, type that in the broadcast in the chat. It makes it a lot more activity. So would love for you to ask any question that you might have there. Thank you, Joy and CL, for your questions. Those have been great. And thanks again. So another question I had down. Oh, I was getting ready to talk about too many agents. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Sometimes people will say, I think there are too many agents in the business, or I've heard I had a friend who got their license and they didn't do very well with real estate. Well, first of all, um, you know, I'm I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel, and so I went to a YouTube creators conference last week, saw some just amazing speakers, and the last two speakers, they were so good. And the one gentleman, his name was Daniel. I actually hired him and I had a coaching call with him today. Great guy. He subscribed to my channel. I don't know if Daniel's watching, but we went through my channel like really good. And Daniel's like, you got to change this and you got to change that. And that's okay. You want to coach, right? But I want to tell you that sometimes I've thought to myself, um, there's too many YouTubers out there, or there's too many YouTube channels, or I'll never make it. And I came back from this vid summit like on a high, really feeling so pumped up and good. And then by Sunday, I was like down. I heard that as low as a wagon wheel in a snake's belly in a wagon wheel rut. I mean, I was feeling pretty low because I started comparing myself to all of these other YouTube channels. And then I watched Daniel Battel's his name. I watched his YouTube video on YouTube creating, and Daniel's like, don't start comparing yourself to other channels. That's the worst thing you can do. And I appreciated his advice. But we were talking today, and one of the things he talked to me about was you might want to like really talk to people about, is real estate a good career for you? And so I need to have a session of videos for that. But I don't want you to think that there's too many agents or someone else um, got in real estate and they didn't do well. You want to be your own unique person. And I think you can do well if you just uh, concentrate on that. Now, we've got another question that came in here from Lay. Thank you. I completed a course for Oklahoma. What additional preparation do you offer to help prepare for the Oklahoma exam? Well, we do have what I call an Oklahoma cheat sheet, Lay, and it's not really cheating, okay? But it's what I did was I actually took the real estate candidate handbook that has the outline of what is covered in Oklahoma because our course is approved in Oklahoma. And I actually went through the candidate handbook and I went through step by step, line by line. And so that information we have available, Lay, and if you'll reach out to me afterwards, um, you can send me an email. I'd love to help you with that. Okay. So thank you for that. Very, very interesting. Joy also wants to know, I am also an interior designer as well, as I've been in the business for over 38 years. Where do you get your staging certification as well? And can you also study for your broker's license starting out as an agent? So, um, first of all, Joy, in Missouri, every state's different on the broker requirement. Most states do require you to have had your salesperson's license for a certain required period of time, but each state's different. In Missouri, you have to have 2 years experience as a real estate salesperson before you can get a broker's license. Now, I've been told in Missouri that you do have to have a um, a license to be an interior design, but I think that I think that that's definitely gonna help you, and there are some certificates that you can certifications you can get for, staging, so, I can give you information about that as well, so it's a great question, thank you so much. And another question just came in here is, how do you feel about the 7% interest rates right now? What do you see happening for new agents going into this career? According to the National Association of Realtors, interest rates may drop back a little bit. Right now, they're at 7. They could get back into the 6 range, but I still think that's a real good interest rate for most people. And what we normally find when interest rates go up, and this is what I found years ago and throughout my real estate career, is you'll find a period of time where interest rates may affect the supply and demand for a short term, but after people get used to those interest rates or it has become kind of common for them, the market tends to pick back up. So, I wouldn't let that bother you. And I wouldn't let too many agents in the field bother you. The one thing that I've had to remind myself, and I'm going to get back to this YouTube creators conference and content I went to, is that there are you hear people say all the time, there's a lot of people in that market or that niche, or there's a lot of competition there. True, anything you go into, you're going to have a lot of competition. However, what I think's very important for you to remember is that can still succeed, okay? If I said in fact, when my wife told me, "You ought to put your real estate school online," I said at that time, I said, um, I think there's too many people that have their real estate, schools out there." If I had if I had kept that thought in my mind, I would have never gotten my real estate license. So, you know, or never put my real estate school online. Let me back that up. So don't look at that as being a deterrent from getting your real estate license because there's always going to be people in a market. There's always going to be a lot of competition. You just have to get in and figure out what works and what is successful and how do I do it? I mean, I hired a YouTube coach today to find out what am I doing wrong and what do you suggest? And it was a 90-minute call and I did have to spend some money for that coaching, but I'm telling you what, he gave me some great advice and I'm hoping that will move me forward. I see my good friend Katie is on here. Katie is also owns a real estate school down. She has a live school if you're down in the Springfield, Branson area. Katie says, I agree with everything John says about rates and the number of agents. If you work your business, you will succeed. So thank you, Katie. Appreciate that. And she also says, I would like to throw in a plug for John's online school. If you want to take online classes, he is the best. He has the best resources for his students. Bless you, Katie. And I think Alex has sent that $20 check to you for that statement you just posted. No, I'm teasing. So, but yeah, don't let too many agents be in the business, especially when I hear someone say, "Well, my cousin got their real estate license and they didn't do very well." You know what? Don't worry, don't pay attention to that. They maybe didn't follow the recipe. So anyway, and Joy says, "That's awesome to know. Thank you, Joy." And then Katie is laughing at my last statement. So anyway, I wanna have fun with the conversation and, Katie, I'd love for you to join us. I could send you a link right now, and I could bring you on the call if you'd like to be a part of the show. I'm gonna copy this. We'll see if we can bring Katie into the mix here, so because she could give us some great advice as well, and I kinda want this to, uh be a fun, entertaining time. So I'm just going in real quick. We'll see if Katie can jump on the line here. So I'd love to have you on here. She's a very good friend of mine. So anyway, we're having fun here. But too many questions now. Another question that people tend to come up with, another question that I have that people come up to is how do you make money? That's a big a big concern is, can I make enough money or how do you make money? One of the interesting things about real estate that I've always appreciated is you set your own pay. And if you get out and work hard, you can make a lot of money. I love to talk in some of my classes that I'm teaching, live classes that I'm teaching, where I talk about the law of motion, and it's Newton's law of motion. And basically, what Newton's law of motion says, and this is John Mayfield paraphrasing, is um, whatever force you put into something, you will get a greater or equal force in return. So think about that. If all you do is sit on the couch, are you going to make a lot of money selling real estate? The answer is no. But if you get out and knock on doors and you do some things, the answer is yes. I just did a podcast for Missouri Realtors. This year, I'm 2022 president for Missouri Realtors, and I did a podcast for Missouri Realtors and interviewed a lady by the name of Kim Hayden. Kim's out of the Quebec area, and she was talking about door hangers and bringing door hangers in. And I see Katie's in our waiting room, so I'll bring her in here in just a moment. But Kim was talking about door hangers, and she said, "I'm not talking about knocking on doors. I'm talking about just hanging things on doors." And Kim really got her start going out putting door hangers out, and she was talking about how she put her grandmother's recipes on the door hangers because she loves to cook, and she was talking about how you could take pictures of interesting bushes and doors and different things and use that in your social media. And then she was talking about having a Santa Claus with people bringing their pets, their dogs, to get a picture with Santa Claus at a local dog store in your area, and getting all of it, not spending money, but having fun, getting out and meeting people and just being a local community expert. And so if that's what I did, and Kim's resonated with me so much. So if you go to iTunes or Podbean, just search for Missouri Realtors podcast and you can find that. So I'm going to bring my friend Katie on here. Hello, Katie. Thank you for
Hey,
joining.
John. Thank
I've
you.
wanted to have a guest. So Katie's with Real Estate School of the Ozarks, and she sends all of her live students to us. But naturally, there are people who want to go and be in person. But she always has some schools have students that just because of their work or whatever, they can't attend a live school, and that's kind of where we mix, but help out. But thank you, Katie. What advice would you give someone who's new or thinking about a career in real estate? I mean, what are some of your talking points?
Yeah, and you can hear me okay, I'm
Yeah,
assuming?
perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay. I would say that, I just had someone recently, she's been struggling taking the test, and she's kind of got cold feet about taking it. And she said, "Well, someone told me that it's not a good time to get into real estate right now." And I said, "No, I mean, absolutely, this is a good time to get into real estate, because this is where those who really work at it will succeed." And I think we're seeing a shift in the students where they're really um, dedicated to the classes, because they
Mhm.
know it's, with the economy just a little bit different than it has been. And, it's just been an unusual 2 to 3 years that we've had recently. And getting into the real estate business now, I think you're going to learn so much more, because it was kind of it was kind of an easy career over the last couple of years, to be
Right.
honest. It was
Yeah.
just because there were so many people that were purchasing very in an unusual way, compared to the past. So I think we're slowing down a bit, and it's a good time that where you're really going to learn what it is to be a real estate agent once you get licensed. And your brokers and trainers are going to have the time to train you and make you the best that you can be in the business.
Exactly. I think that's a great point. And, there was a question that came in the chat about investing in real estate. And I think that's one of the things that I've appreciated of the knowledge of being in real estate because it has afforded me to invest in properties. I'm not that I'm buying properties that my clients have, but sometimes you see a foreclosure that a bank is trying to sell, or you see a property listed with another office, or sometimes I just show a house 4 or 5 times and everybody turns their nose up at it. And I just look at that little house and say, oh my gosh, this could be such a cute house if you did this and did that. And I take my wife over and she's like, "Yeah, I could see that." And we cut away. We were kind of doing the fixer upper before fixer upper ever came along. But that has been a huge financial blessing to my wife and I throughout our life. And I would have never been able to learn how to do that be- if I hadn't been in real estate and kind of got an idea of what prices and values are. So
Absolutely.
good, good. So passing the exam, what study tips would you give to someone who hasn't been back to school for a while and they need to pass the test?
Well, I think that number one is to listen to your instructor, no matter who it is, because like John was saying that he has his study guides and his flashcards and his practice exams. It's so important to review those items and really it's all multiple choice. It is typically two incorrect and two pretty close to correct answers.
Mhm.
And if you can, a lot of the test and passing the test is knowing how to read the question correctly. And if you do that and focus on what your instructor is telling you, it really you can pass. And when you said that about the Springfield proctor saying it takes 6 to 8 times, someone came back to my school and said that the proctor had said that as well, and I kind of wanted to go over and say, please don't say that
Yeah,
because
I know. Yeah.
it can disappoint some people, and because I think it really depends so much on it. Yes, it depends on your instructor, but it also depends on the student doing what the instructor that valuable information you get from your teacher. So
Yeah, and I'm kind of in a different scenario as an online school. I'm trying through video to encourage the students to say, look, get in, get through the school, and go take your test because there's a lot of information. And if you drag this out over a long period of time, it's not good. You have a more unique situation because your students are coming live, and after 2 weeks or whatever the time period is, they're done and they set their exam up, which I think is good. And so, I will be honest, I get frustrated and discouraged sometime when I hear from a student who says I didn't pass the test and then they start telling me items that they saw on the test and they don't remember. And I'm thinking, I know 4 or 5 times throughout the course, I'm just
yeah,
telling them, you'll see this on the real estate
yeah,
question. In
yeah,
fact, I did a video last night and a girl had told me about a question she saw and it's a question, Katie, which we cover all the time. If you have you take an offer to your seller and they make a counteroffer and you deliver the counteroffer to the other agent and then another higher offer comes in, what should you do? And you've never heard back from the other agent.
hmm
And she's like, what am what's the right answer? And she gave me the choices and I said, well, it's you withdraw the other offer be and you accept the new one. And she said, "Oh, I didn't know I answered that wrong," and I
yeah,
felt bad. But, that is that we cover a lot because there's no first in, first out rule with sales contracts. So if Katie brings me a contract and my seller makes a counteroffer and I give it back to Katie and I don't hear anything from Katie, if another offer comes in, I can call up Katie and say, we withdraw our offer. We want to accept a different offer. And so anyway, but I also understand there's a lot of information on the test. And so that's why I don't like for students to drag it out too long. And I want to make sure they get in there and pass the test. But well, Katie, thank you so much for joining us. This was
Yeah,
fun.
thank you, John.
I'm using a different I've used this platform a lot, but I've never done the live stream interview, and so I've wanted to do that.
That's great. I love
Any
it.
last how will I learn the business? That was another question I had, and I think you alluded to that earlier. This is a good time where brokers and managers will provide. But let's talk a little bit about it. And I want people to know sometimes if I'm always a proponent that if Mary Smith is a broker and Mary says, "Hey, you need to get your real estate license. I'd love you to come to work for me." And Mary's encouraging you, you need to go work for Mary. She's your friend. She's encouraged you to do this. But sometimes people are like, I don't know where to go work or who do I go work? What advice would you give for those people?
I always say that if you don't know where you're going to go, that you should choose maybe 3 or 4, how whatever you feel comfortable with. Think about your personality first, and if you feel like you would rather be in a smaller company or in a large company. And number one is the first question you want to ask is, what sort of training am I going to get from the brokerage? And for all of the questions you want to ask, that's the main question, because what's going to happen when you have a contract to write on a Sunday afternoon and there's no one to call to ask for help? So
Right.
that's your training is so important. And and two, yes, you want to know what your commission splits are, and if there are office fees, things like that. But you certainly want to know um, what your I always say to make a spreadsheet of each company and put down, this is what they give me on if I have a sale, and these are my fees. And the bottom line is, it's not necessarily the one that has the best commission split that you
Exactly.
would get. Yeah, it's the one that is going to give you the best support and the best training. And know that if it doesn't work out, it's not hard to leave. You're
It's
an
not
independent
exactly.
contractor. Yeah,
Not
so if
that's
it's not a
right.
good fit, just go somewhere else, and that's fine.
That's right. By the way, I have a thank you, Lay. She said great tips. So appreciate that. I'm going to put that up so our viewers can see that. Thank you so much, Lay, for that. One thing I will remind our viewers is down below, I'm going to have a link in the description to a free ebook I have called Success Tips to Passing the Real Estate Exam and How to Generate Income in Your First 90 Days. But what Katie just said is one of my tips. Talk to 3 or 4 brokers, because first of all, you're going to go into the office and you're going to get a vibe of, do I feel comfortable in this environment? And, don't be afraid to go back twice. As a real estate agent, one of my best, um, Howard Brenton used to call them scripts, but one of my best lines that has helped me sell more houses is, I know buyers are very interested in a home, but I'm not a high pressured salesperson. So I will say, look, why don't you go home, think about it, and we can always come back. I said, it's like a book. You see things the second time you don't see you didn't read the first time. But that encouraging them to come back a second time really just helps sell the property. It's always worked for me anyway. Now, we could get into a whole discussion about, you don't want to wait. My mom used to always say you have to strike when the iron's hot. And I always, if I felt like we needed to write an offer then, or it was a hot piece of property, you don't want to lose out. But sometimes I think looking a second time opens up a whole different perspective. And I think the same can be true by going back in for a second interview with the broker. But I also agree with what you said. Money's not everything. I've had agents who left my company when I was actively recruiting agents, and I had agents who left because they were going to get a better split at another office, and 2
Mhm.
months later they came right back and said, "Oh my
Sure.
gosh," because of what you said, they couldn't get a hold of the broker during the weekend. There was no innovation. There just wasn't a team atmosphere, and so look at all of those tips. So, well,
Absolutely.
Katie, thank you so much.
Thank
Real
you,
Estate
John.
School of the Ozarks, and we are both members of RIA. She
Yes.
just received the RIA. What was the award's
The
name?
Rising Star
The
Award. Yeah.
Rising Star Award. Yes. So, but Katie and I have been good friends for a long time. We'll
Mhm.
be seeing each other at the Missouri Real Estate Commission meeting
Yeah,
coming up, and hopefully we can ask, why do we not get to go take the test and look at it more
I
often?
know.
Because it
Right.
would help. So, all right. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks,
Have a great,
John.
thank you. Bye. Well, appreciate Katie mentioning that. Did want to mention sometimes people say, I don't know if I can afford going to real estate school right now. Well, one of the really cool things we're proud of at Global Real Estate School is we're now affiliated with Shop Pay on our site. And by the way, it's globalrealestateschool.com, but many of our students break that up. I think Shop Pay will break it up in 4 6 month or 4 6 week installments. So don't let the cost bother you. And that's leads me to another question that I hear a lot is people will say, well, gosh, I have realtor dues and MLS dues, and you can calculate all of that up and say, oh, I've got, you might have $1,500 your first year invested in getting your real estate license. And I say, where else could you go and open a business up for $1,500? Because that's really what you are as a real estate professional. You are a small business owner. You're your own business, your own boss. Now, yes, you work under a broker who has policies and procedures and guidelines. And yes, you do have to follow the real estate commission's guidelines. But at the end of the day, you're really your own boss. You set your hours, you get out and work. And so it's very important for you to remember that there will be some upfront costs, there will be an investment, but gosh, think about it. If you can invest 1,500 or $2,000 for your own business, one transaction in most markets around the state of Missouri, anyway, and in other states as well, one transaction would pay that back and generate a profit. So, um, can you afford it? Well, you cannot afford to do it. Another quick story. My theme this year for Missouri Realtors is It's Your Story, but this is an important story. My wife and I are driving to pick up peaches down at Campbell, Missouri this summer. And I remember listening to a podcast, an audio book that I had purchased from a guy by the name of Dan Kennedy. And it was called, Dan has a bunch of books called The No BS Such and Such. And this was a book on marketing. And he was talking about people that don't use their database correctly. Now, I've been running the online school for 3 years. We've been very successful. We're in 9 states. We have a lot of people in our database. And my wife looked at me while we were driving down there and she said, "Are we doing any of that?" And I looked at her and I said, "I don't think I don't think we are like we should." And she goes, "Well, we need to." Well, I came back and I started putting those principles in to play of what Dan suggested in his book. Sent out an e-newsletter to our entire database with some valuable content, which was the key. Do you know um, that newsletter was huge for my school? We told people about CE classes. We sold some classes. We told people we were approved in Florida. People from Missouri signed up for our Florida course because they wanted to get their Florida license. It was such a hit, and I thought, "Holy cow, I'm not using that database like I need to." So, I really started getting in and working in this program that we use, and it's like, "Oh gosh, I need help," because I didn't, some of I'm a tech person, but some of it was over my head. So, I hired a gentleman, cost me a little bit of money, but I hired a person to help me. Now, that person has been so huge for me and helped us in so many ways with our database that what I paid that person, I've more than made back fourfold. So when I hired Dan today as a YouTube creator consultant, I'm like, I have to do this. Sometimes you just have to invest money and you have to spend money if you want to make money. So, yes, it does cost to get your real estate license, but you're going to be able to do well. And we're going to be featuring more content, thanks to Dan, on my channel here to help you after you get your license. Because, yes, I want you to pass the real estate exam, but I want you to be a successful real estate professional. So, Joy, I'm so glad you're excited. Thank you for watching. Thanks everyone for watching today. And don't forget, next Thursday, we'll be live streaming again. I'll have a topic and a session loaded up for you so you can see and be on the lookout for that. But thanks again to Katie for joining. And thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great day. And if you need more help, reach out to me anytime. Go to globalrealestateschool.com. We've got great videos you can watch. Is the next one that'll be coming up on the screen for those who are watching the recording. But as always, go out and make it a great day.